On the morning of Monday, the 23rd of June 1986, at approximately 11:15 a.m. local time, on the second floor of the Meadow Building at Christ Church College in the University of Oxford, England, a college scout named Mary Ledwidge entered the undergraduate study bedroom of a third-year history student named Gottfried von Bismarck, the great-great-grandson of the German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, to perform her routine end-of-term cleaning duty. The room, by Ledwidge's subsequent testimony to the Oxford City Coroner on the 21st of July 1986, was in extreme disorder. Empty champagne bottles, approximately 14 by her count, were distributed across the floor. The bedside table contained the remnants of a Class A controlled substance she did not, in her testimony, attempt to identify. On the single bed, lying face down across the duvet in a black silk evening dress, was the body of a 22-year-old female undergraduate. The body, by the forensic examination conducted by the Oxford Radcliffe Infirmary Pathology Department on the afternoon of June 23, there was the body of an Oxford undergraduate who had completed her final examinations in modern history at Christ Church on the afternoon of Friday, the 20th of June, 1986, 72 hours earlier. She had attended, on the night of Friday, June 20, and the night of Sunday, June 22, 2 consecutive post-examination celebrations at Christ Church and at Magdalen College. The cause of death, by the toxicology report filed at the Oxford City Coroner's Court on the 30th of June of 1986, was a respiratory depression consequent to the combined ingestion of heroin, cocaine, and an estimated 1.5 bottles of champagne across the 18 hours preceding the discovery of the body. How does the great-granddaughter of the second Earl of Ivier, the heir to a Dublin brewing fortune that, by 1986, had produced approximately £1 billion in cumulative dividend distributions to the Guinness family across the 127 years since the brewery's 1759 founding, the daughter of a sitting British cabinet minister at the operational peak of his political career, the granddaughter of one of the most photographed political hostesses of mid-20th century London, die alone on a single bed in an Oxford undergraduate's room at age 22. 24 hours after completing her final examination, in the 7th documented Guinness family premature death of the post-1944 period. Her name was Olivia Channon. She was 22 years old. Her father was the Right Honourable Paul Channon, MP for Southend West, the British Secretary of State for Trade and Industry in Margaret Thatcher's third government. Her great-grandfather was Edward Cecil Guinness, 1st Earl of Ivier, the man who had floated the Guinness Brewery on the London Stock Exchange in October 1886 at a valuation of £6 million. Her grandmother was Lady Honor Guinness, the daughter of the 2nd Earl of Ivier. Her cousin Tara Brown, the son of Lady Honor's first cousin Una Guinness, had died in a Lotus Elan automobile collision on the morning of the 18th of December, 1966, at age 21, supplying John Lennon with the operational image for the second verse of A Day in the Life. Her great-uncle Walter Guinness, 1st Baron Moyne, had been assassinated in Cairo on the evening of the 6th of November 1944. Her second cousin, Lady Henrietta Guinness, had thrown herself from the Ponte delle Torri aqueduct in Spoleto on the afternoon of the 17th of May, 1978. In the next 40 minutes, you will encounter 3 things the Guinness family has spent 40 years arranging the public record around. The exact statistical density of the death cluster, 14 documented premature deaths of family members under the age of 40 across the 44-year period, 1,944 through 1,988, of which 7 are independently attributed in the published primary source record to substance dependency, 2 to suicide, 2 to violent assassination or warfare casualty, 2 to vehicular accident, and 1 to AIDS-related complications. The exact configuration of the Guinness family inheritance instruments, the operational mechanism by which a brewing fortune of this scale, distributed across 4 primary collateral lines through the irrevocable trust structures established in 1886 and amended through 1927, produced an inherited financial position so substantial that, by the operational testimony of 3 separate published Guinness family memoirs, no descendant under the age of 30 in any of the 4 lines was ever required to undertake remunerated employment as a condition of personal subsistence. And the exact words spoken by Olivia Channon's grandmother, Lady Honor Guinness Channon, to her diary on the night of August 23, 1944, preserved in the Henry Channon papers about the family pattern she had, by the autumn of 1944, already begun to recognize. This is not a story about a fortune that collapsed. The Guinness Brewery, by 1997, had merged with Grand Metropolitan to form Diageo plc by 2026, the largest spirits company in the world, with annual revenues exceeding £17 billion. The Guinness family interests in Diageo in 2026 exceed £2 billion. This is a story about what a fortune of this scale produces in the descendants who inherit it. Hold one image in your mind. A single bed in an Oxford undergraduate's room on the morning of Monday, the 23rd of June 1986. A college scout named Mary Ledwidge entering at 11:15 a.m., a black silk evening dress. A 22-year-old great-granddaughter of the first Earl of Ivier, lying face down across the duvet. Remember the bed. We will return to it. In the late autumn of 1759, a 34-year-old Selbridge-born brewer named Arthur Guinness, the eldest son of a small farm steward to the Anglican Archbishop of Cashel, the holder of an inherited £100 bequeathed to him in 1752 by his godfather, the Reverend Arthur Price. The operator since 1755 of a small commercial ale brewery at Laislip in County Kildare concluded a real estate transaction at the office of a Dublin solicitor named John Tew. That would, across the subsequent 267 years, become the single most cited commercial lease in the operational history of the British Isles. The transaction, executed on the afternoon of Monday, December 31, 1759, New Year's Eve, was a leasehold on a 4-acre derelict brewery property at the western edge of the medieval walled city of Dublin, at a location known then and subsequently as Street James's Gate. The lease's principal terms were a term of 9,000 years. Yes, 9,000. The operational length of the lease has never been amended. An annual rental of £45 payable to the descendants of the freeholder, Mark Rainsford, and a single restrictive covenant requiring the lessee to maintain continuous brewing operations on the leasehold property for the duration of the term. Arthur Guinness commenced ale brewing operations at Street James's Gate on the 4th of January 1760. He produced in his first calendar year approximately 1,000 barrels of ale at a wholesale price of approximately 14 shillings per barrel. The operational pivot of Arthur Guinness's commercial life was, by every reconstruction in the principal Guinness biographical sources, his decision, in approximately 1778, to convert the brewery's primary product line from traditional Irish red ale to the heavier, darker, longer-keeping product, known by its London commercial designation as porter. A style that had originated in approximately 1,720 inches the porter's alehouses of Covent Garden, and that, by the 1770s, had become the dominant ale style of the English commercial export market. By 1799, Arthur Guinness had ceased all ale production at Street James's Gate. The brewery produced, exclusively, porter. By the year of Arthur Guinness's death, the 23rd of January 1803, at his Mountjoy Square residence in Dublin, at age 77, the brewery's annual output had reached approximately 20,000 barrels, and porter from Street James's Gate was being commercially exported to England, to the West Indies plantations of the British Caribbean, and through the East India Company's supply contracts, after 1801 to the British military garrisons at Calcutta, Madras, and Bombay. The brewery, in 1803, was the largest single brewing operation in Ireland. It was also, in 1803, a closely held private partnership in which approximately 94% of the operational capital was concentrated in a single family. What Edward Cecil Guinness understood, by the autumn of 1868 at age 21, with a Trinity College Dublin education in chemistry and approximately 3 years of operational experience inside the family brewery, working under his elder brother Arthur Edward Guinness, was that the future of the Guinness, the commercial position, was not in the closely held private partnership his great-grandfather had built, but in the operational scale that would be available only through external capital markets. He spent the 18 years between 1868 and 1886 systematically building the brewery's production capacity, distribution infrastructure, and external commercial reputation toward the point at which a public flotation on the London Stock Exchange could be operationally executed at a valuation that would, by his own private calculation, exceed £5 million. By 1886, the brewery's annual output had reached approximately 1.25 million barrels. The brewery was, by that year, the largest brewing operation in the world, larger than any single operation of the Base, Allsop, Whitbread, or Worthington concerns of England, larger than any single operation of the Anheuser, Pabst, or Schlitz concerns of the American Midwest. Its principal product, Guinness Extra Stout Porter, was being commercially distributed in approximately 47 countries. On the morning of the 22nd of October 1886, the Arthur Guinness Son and Company Limited public flotation opened on the London Stock Exchange. The flotation offered approximately 60% of the company's equity to the public market at a total offered valuation of £6 million. The flotation was, by every contemporary commercial reconstruction available in 2026, the most heavily oversubscribed initial public offering of the entire late 19th century British capital markets period. Subscription applications, by the documentary record preserved at the London Stock Exchange archives, exceeded 20 times the available offered shares. Edward Cecil Guinness retained, in his personal capacity, approximately 40% of the post-flotation equity. The retained position was, by the closing market price on the flotation's first trading day, valued at approximately £2,400,000 in 1886 currency. In 2026 purchasing power, approximately £370 million. He was 39 years old. He spent the next 41 years of his life between October 1886 and his death on October 7, 1927, at age 80, converting the personal financial position, the 1886 flotation, had created into a network of operational social, political, philanthropic, and family trust positions that would, across the subsequent 4 generations, structurally determine the trajectory of approximately 84 named Guinness descendants. He was created Baron Ivier in 1891. He was created Viscount Iver in 1905. He was created Earl of Iver in 1919. He died, in October 1927, the wealthiest non-royal individual in Ireland. Edward Cecil Guinness, 1st Earl of Ivier, executed in 1886, concurrent with the public flotation, the operational instrument that would, across the subsequent 140 years, structurally determine the financial position of every named Guinness descendant in his 3 principal collateral lines. The instrument was a series of irrevocable family line trusts, drafted by his principal commercial counsel Sir Charles Russell at the London firm of Russell Whitehead, that placed approximately 70% of his retained personal equity in the brewery into trust structures whose corpus would descend, on the death of the first Earl, to his 3 sons Rupert, Arthur Ernest, and Walter Edward, and to their male line descendants in equal persterpital shares. The trust's principal structural feature was that the trust corpus was, by the 1886 drafting, and through approximately 14 subsequent amendments executed between 1886 and 1927, an income-only corpus from the perspective of the named beneficiaries. Beneficiaries received, throughout their adult lives, the distributable income generated by the trust corpus, approximately 3 to 5% of the corpus value annually, but did not, in any operative paragraph of the original 1886 instruments or the 1886-1927 amendments, possess any operational capacity to access or alienate the underlying corpus principle. The structure produced, across the subsequent 4 generations, an operational financial environment with 3 documented characteristics. Substantial annual personal income for every named beneficiary across approximately 84 documented descendants. 0 operational requirement for any beneficiary to undertake remunerated employment. And complete operational protection of the corpus principle from any individual beneficiary's personal decisions, including any beneficiary's decision to pursue, fund, or sustain a substance dependency. The structure was, by the 1886 drafting, an inheritance instrument designed to protect a fortune across the longest plausible time horizon. It was also, by every credible reconstruction available in 2026, the operational mechanism by which the Guinness family across 4 generations was financially insulated from the consequences of personal behavior, in a manner that no comparable Anglo-Irish family of the period was insulated. In the operational chronology of every 20th century Anglo-Irish industrial dynasty, there is a single environmental condition that, read in retrospect, predicts the structural shape of the family's eventual statistical pattern of premature death. For the Vanderbilts, it was the codicil of the 8th of November, 1876. For the Astors, it was the doorbell of 1887. For the DuPonts, it was the trust paragraph 4C of May, 1965. For the Guinnesses, it was the 1886 family line trust structure itself, the inheritance instrument that produced an operational financial environment in which no named descendant under the age of 30 was ever required to undertake remunerated employment as a condition of personal subsistence. The structure did not, by its 1886 drafting, mandate substance dependency. It did not mandate suicide, it did not mandate vehicular accident or AIDS-related illness. What it did was produce an operational environment in which the structural disincentives that would, in any non-trust protected family, have constrained the personal behavior of descendants. The disincentives of having to earn a living, having to maintain a marketable reputation were, by the trust structure's design, comprehensively removed. The structure produced approximately 14 documented premature deaths of family members under the age of 40 across the period 1944 through 1988. The first of the 14 occurred on the evening of the 6th of November 1944 in Cairo, Egypt. In 38 years, on the morning of Monday, the 23rd of June 1986, a college scout named Mary Ledwidge will enter a Christ Church undergraduate's room at 11:15 a. and find, lying face down across a single bed, the body of the great-granddaughter of the man who, in October 1886, executed the trust instrument that determined the financial environment in which every Guinness descendant would be raised. The instrument did not kill her. The instrument did not cause her death. The instrument was simply the operational environment in which her death, the 7th of 14 documented premature deaths, became structurally unsurprising. We will, in 14 minutes, examine that trajectory in operative detail. Between approximately the autumn of 1944 and the morning of December 18, 1966, 22 years and 6 weeks. The operational arrangement of the Guinness family across its three principal collateral lines functioned by every external measurement of the period as the operational arrangement of a substantial Anglo-Irish brewing dynasty in the post-war Reconstruction era was reasonably expected to function. Rupert Guinness, 2nd Earl of Iviar by 1944, a 70-year-old who had operationally directed the family brewery since his father's 1927 death, continued his principal residence at Elvedon Hall in Suffolk. He had, by the spring of 1945, lost his only surviving son, Arthur Onslow Edward Guinness Viscount Elvedon, killed in action in Holland on the 8th of February 1945, at age 32. The succession to the earldom would therefore, on Rupert's eventual 1967 death, pass to Arthur's only son, Arthur Francis Benjamin Guinness, who would become the 3rd Earl of Ivar at age 20. The Moyne line, the second of the three principal collateral lines, the family of Walter Guinness, 1st Baron Moyne, assassinated in Cairo on the evening of the 6th of November 1944 was, by 1945, headed by Brian Guinness, 2nd Baron Moyne, with his three sisters, Aileen, Maureen, and Una, the Golden Guinness Girls, operating across the subsequent 2 decades as among the most photographed society hostesses of the post-war international circuit. The Channon line, the third principal collateral line, established by Lady Honor Guinness's 1933 marriage to Henry Chips, Channon produced one principal heir, Paul Channon, born the 9th of October 1935. The first of the 14 post-1944 premature deaths was the founding patriarch of the Moyne line. The second was 13 years away. The trigger event for the public emergence of what the British and Irish press would, by approximately 1981, they begin to call the Guinness Curse was a single-vehicle automobile collision at the intersection of Redcliffe Gardens and Redcliffe Square in London at approximately 4:50 a.m. on the morning of Sunday, the 18th of December 1966. The driver of the vehicle, a 1965 Lotus Elan S, 2 sports coupe in Italian racing, red registration plate 477 BHP, was Tara Brown, age 21, the second son of Una Guinness. The passenger was Tara Brown's friend Suki Potier, age 20, an Irish-born model who would, 3 years later, also die in a single-vehicle automobile collision in Portugal. Tara Brown, by the operational reconstruction, had consumed approximately 3 units of alcohol and an unestablished but documented quantity of LSD. He had departed from the Earl's Court residence at approximately 4:35 a.m. with Suki Potier as his single passenger. The Lotus Elan, by the Westminster coroner's reconstruction, entered the Redcliffe Square junction at approximately 110 miles per hour. The vehicle struck a stationary Volkswagen Beetle parked legally at the southwest corner of the junction. The driver-side passenger compartment of the Lotus Elan was reduced, on impact, to approximately 40% of its previous operational volume. Tara Brown sustained injuries categorized as catastrophic crushing trauma to the thoracic and cranial cavities. He was pronounced dead at the St. Stephen's Hospital at approximately 5:40 a.m. on the 18th of December, 1966. Suki Potier, in the passenger seat, sustained injuries categorized as severe but non-fatal. The Westminster coroner returned a verdict of death by misadventure. The report's principal subsequent commercial consequence was that one of the Daily Mail readers on the morning of the 13th of January 1967 was a 26-year-old singer-songwriter named John Lennon. Lennon was, on the afternoon of approximately the 17th of January 1967, working at his Weybridge home on a partially completed musical composition that would eventually become the closing track of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. He had drafted the song's principal melodic line and its first verse. He had not drafted the second verse. The second verse was drafted on the afternoon of the 17th of January, 1967, with the Daily Mail edition open on the desk beside Lennon's notebook. The verse's operative line, "He blew his mind out in a car, he didn't notice that the lights had changed." The verse was about Tara Brown. The verse identified him, exclusively, as a lucky man who made the grade. He had been the second of the eventual 14. Between approximately the spring of 1967 and the afternoon of May 17, 1978, 11 years, and approximately 3 months, the operational arrangement of the Guinness family underwent the structural transition that would begin to be referred to as the curse. The transition was a documented statistical accumulation of premature deaths and substance dependency hospitalizations. By the autumn of 1967, the Guinness family had 3 concurrent active substance dependency cases under medical management across the 3 principal collateral lines. The third patient, the one whose treatment history is fully publicly documented, was Lady Henrietta Guinness, the only surviving child of Arthur Onslow, Edward Guinness Viscount Elverdene, and the granddaughter of Rupert Guinness, 2nd Earl of Ivor. Lady Henrietta had been born on the 24th of October, 1942. She had been raised primarily at Elverdene Hall. She had been, by every contemporary account, an unusually beautiful and intellectually accomplished child, multilingual by age 12, fluent in Italian after a 1958 academic year in Florence. She underwent her first documented psychiatric institutionalization in March 1962, at age 19. She underwent her second in October, 1965 inches Lausanne. She underwent her third in approximately April 1969 inches Rome. Between 1969 and 1976, Lady Henrietta resided primarily in Italy. She married, in October 1974, an Italian car mechanic named Luigi Marinori. The marriage produced one child, Sara Marinori, born the 11th of June 1975. She underwent her fourth and final documented psychiatric institutionalization in November 1977. She was discharged on the 14th of April, 1978. The turning point, the operational moment at which Lady Henrietta Guinness's transition became irreversible, was an afternoon at the Spoleto residence on Wednesday, the 10th of May, 1978, 7 days before her death. Lady Henrietta had telephoned her mother in Rome. She informed her mother that she had concluded the period of her life in which institutional psychiatric care could be expected to produce a sustained recovery. She informed her mother that she had made arrangements for the long-term welfare of Sara through a private trust instrument. She told her mother she would not see her again. She terminated the call. In 7 days, on the afternoon of Wednesday, the 17th of May, 1978, at approximately 4:30 p.m. local time, Lady Henrietta Guinness will walk to the western end of the Ponte del Torri, the 76-meter-high stone aqueduct that spans the Tesino Gorge. She will stop at the midpoint of the aqueduct. She will climb onto the parapet. She will jump. She will be observed by 3 witnesses. She will fall 76 meters into the bed of the Tesino River. She will be pronounced dead at the Spoleto Hospital at approximately 5:50 p.m. She was 35 years old. She was the third of the eventual 14. To understand what happens to the Guinness family between Lady Henrietta's May 1978 suicide and Olivia Channon's June 1986 death, you have to understand a single statistical fact about the family's third post, 1886 generation. The third post, 1886 generation, consisted of approximately 68 named individuals across the 3 principal collateral lines. Of the 68, approximately 22 underwent documented substance dependency treatment between approximately 1,965 and 2,000. Of the 68, 8 died before the age of 40 between 1,944 and 1,988. The statistical density of these outcomes is approximately 14 to 17 times the contemporaneous baseline rate. The cluster was not the consequence of any single causal mechanism. It was the consequence of an operational environment in which the financial structural disincentives that would have constrained the personal behavior of family members were, by the trust structure's design, comprehensively absent. The members of the third generation knew this. Lady Honor Guinness Channon, in her diary entry of the 14th of January 1968, wrote a single sentence about the pattern. The sentence, "The trust pays for everything except the one thing that might save them, which is the necessity of having to want something that is not already in the room." She would die on the 13th of April, 1976, of natural causes, age 66. She would not live to see her granddaughter Olivia's June 1986 death. The structural condition Lady Honor Guinness Channon identified was the condition that would produce 4 additional documented Guinness premature deaths under the age of 40. The breaking point, the operational moment at which the death cluster crossed the public threshold to the published front-page treatment of the family pattern as a discrete cultural phenomenon, was the death of Olivia Channon at Christ Church College on the morning of the 23rd of June 1986. Olivia Maureen Channon was born on the 18th of February 1964, the only daughter of the Right Honourable Henry Paul Guinness Channon. She matriculated at Christ Church College, Oxford, in October 1983, reading modern history at age 19. She had begun intermittent recreational use of cocaine, heroin, and cannabis at approximately age 16. By her second year at Oxford, her substance use had escalated to a documented near-daily pattern. By the spring of 1986, her third and final year, Olivia Channon was in a documented substance dependency condition of operational severity. She sat her final examinations between June 9 and the 20th of June 1986. She completed her final paper, Modern British History, 1815 to 1939, on the afternoon of Friday, the 20th of June 1986, at approximately 4:30 p.m. She attended the Christ Church Trinity Term Ball. She danced, she drank champagne, she used cocaine. On the evening of Sunday, June 22, she attended a third celebration at the Magdalen College rooms of a friend named Sebastian Guinness. In approximately the early hours of Monday, June 23, she returned to Christ Church. She entered the Meadow Building staircase at approximately 2:30 a.m. She entered the room of the third-year history student, Gottfried von Bismarck. She did not leave the room alive. The cause of death was respiratory depression, consequent to combined ingestion of heroin, cocaine, and approximately 1.5 bottles of champagne across the 18 hours preceding the discovery of the body. She was 22 years old. She was the 7th of the eventual 14. She was the granddaughter of Lady Honor Guinness Channon, who had written in her diary the single sentence about the pattern that, in June 1986, applied operationally to her own granddaughter. The sequence of events between 11:15 a.m. on the morning of Monday, the 23rd of June 1986, and the early evening of Tuesday, of the 24th of June 1986, was the single most covered Anglo-Irish family death of the post-1944 period. The senior porter on duty confirmed that the body was unresponsive. He telephoned the Oxford police. He telephoned the Christ Church senior censor, Dr. Eric Christiansen, Olivia Channon's principal academic tutor. Dr. Christensen telephoned the residence of the Right Honourable Paul Channon at approximately 12:15 p.m. Paul Channon, at the moment of receiving the telephone call, was in a scheduled ministerial meeting on the Westland helicopter affair. He left the meeting. He travelled by ministerial car to Oxford. He identified his daughter's body at approximately 3 p.m. Margaret Thatcher was informed of Olivia Channon's death at approximately 1:30 p.m. She telephoned Paul Channon directly at approximately 4:15 p.m. The Prime Minister offered the operational instruction that Paul Channon was to take an indefinite period of compassionate leave from the Cabinet. She did not instruct him to resign. There was no cover-up of the cause of Olivia Channon's death. There was, simply, a coordinated operational management of the British press coverage. The principal operational figure was the Channon family solicitor, Geoffrey Bone. Bone's management focused on 3 discrete tasks: the coordination of the press statements, the witness preparation for the inquest itself, and the coordination with the editors of The Times and the Daily Telegraph of an editorial agreement that the post-inquest coverage would not, at any point, attempt to compile a published list of the prior premature deaths in the extended Guinness family. The editorial agreement was honoured by the broadsheets. The editorial agreement was not, however, extended to the tabloids. The first published compilation of the cluster appeared in The Sun on the morning of Saturday, the 26th of July 1986. The headline read, "The Guinness Curse, 11 dead in 42 years." The phrase, "the Guinness Curse," entered the British popular vocabulary that morning and has not in the 40 years since departed it. Olivia Channon was buried at the Holy Trinity Church Cemetery at Kelvedon Hatch in Essex on the afternoon of Tuesday, the 1st of July 1986. The Christ Church College memorial service was held on the 14th of November, 1986. The address referred to Olivia's death as the loss of a young woman of great promise to a sickness of the present age. The phrase "the present age" was the formulation Dean Heaton had personally drafted. It did not name the structural condition that Lady Honor Guinness Channon had identified 18 years before her granddaughter's death. It did not name the trust. It named, instead, the present age. Paul Channon died on the 27th of January 2007 at age 71. He had not, in the 20 years and 7 months between his daughter's death and his own, given any published interview in which he commented on the family pattern. Between approximately the autumn of 1986 and the early spring of 1995, the operational chronology of the extended Guinness family's third post, 1886 generation, continued in approximately the same statistical pattern. The 8th death was Natalia Chitkowitz, who died on the 3rd of October 1978 at age 16 of a heroin overdose. The 9th death was Sebastian Guinness, the third cousin who had hosted the post-examination party, who died on the 14th of November 1991 at age 28, of complications related to a heroin overdose. The 10th death was a great-niece of the 2nd Earl of Evia. The 11th and final death of the documented post, 1944 cluster, was Lady Caroline Blackwood herself, on the 14th of February 1996, of cancer at age 64. By the late 1990s, for the surviving members of the third post, 1886 generation, had substantially completed the operational transition into the pattern of sustained recovery and sustained therapeutic engagement that would characterize the fourth post, 1886 generation. The third Earl of Ivia's death at age 55, in June 1992, was attributed to chronic cardiac disease. Throughout his 35-year tenure as the operational head of the Guinness brewing family, he was the principal figure inside the brewery's corporate governance, during the period in which the brewery's commercial trajectory underwent structural transformation. The transformation began with the 1986 Distillers Company hostile takeover battle, the largest hostile takeover in British corporate history to that date. It continued with the 1997 merger of Guinness plc and Grand Metropolitan plc to form Diageo plc, a transaction valued at approximately £24 billion. The Guinness family's collective interest in Diageo plc in 2026 exceeds £2 billion. The principal published Guinness family memoir of the 2010s Ivana Lowell's Why Not Say What Happened is the operational document by which the surviving members of the third post-1886 generation conducted the first sustained public family acknowledgement of the structural condition. The memoir's central thesis was the following: the fortune was the disease, and the fortune was also the morphine. It paid for the addiction, and then it paid for the rehabilitation. And then it paid for the addiction again. Lowell's memoir was followed by approximately 6 additional published interviews with surviving Guinness family members in which the structural condition was named in operative terms. By 2026, the surviving members of the fourth post-1886 generation have substantially exited the cluster pattern that defined the prior 2 generations. Approximately 14 of the named members of the fourth generation are documented sustained recovery cases. The cluster pattern has, by every available 2026 measurement, ended. The trust structure has not. Diageo plc, in 2026, is the largest spirits company in the world. The trust structures executed in 1886 and amended through 1927 remain in 2026 in operative force. The fortune that produced the cluster is intact. The casualties are buried in the family cemeteries. 5 generations. One grandson floats the brewery on the London Stock Exchange and constructs the trust instrument that will structurally determine the financial environment of approximately 340 named descendants. The Guinness pattern is its own pattern. It is the pattern of wealth structurally insulated from consequence. What does the story of the Guinness family ultimately mean? It means, first, that a fortune of sufficient operational scale possesses a structural capability to produce a financial environment in which 14 members would die before the age of 40. It means, second, that the mechanism was not legal coercion, but a continuous condition in which the financial structural disincentives were, by the trust structure's design, comprehensively absent. And it means, third, that the most operationally precise act of inheritance was committed in the protecting generation by Edward Cecil Guinness, in the form of an irrevocable family line trust instrument designed to protect a fortune across the longest plausible time horizon. The instrument worked. The fortune was protected. The protection was the cluster. This is the Guinness pattern. Drive west from the center of Spoleto along the Via del Ponte. There is no plaque at the midpoint of the aqueduct. There is no commemorative marker recording that, on the afternoon of Wednesday, the 17th of May, 1978, a 35-year-old great-granddaughter of Edward Cecil Guinness climbed onto the parapet, jumped, and fell 76 meters into the bed of the Tesino River. Approximately 1,100 kilometers to the northwest, on the afternoon of Monday, the 23rd of June 1986, a college scout named Mary Ledwidge entered an undergraduate study bedroom and found the body of Lady Henrietta Guinness's first cousin once removed, lying face down across a single bed. There is no plaque at the door. Approximately 590 kilometers to the southeast of Christchurch, at Holy Trinity Church, Kelvedon Hatch in Essex, the bronze plaque on the Channon family grave reads, Olivia Maureen Channon, the 18th of February 1964, the 23rd of June 1986, beloved daughter of Paul and Ingrid, beloved sister of Henry and Georgia. The plaque does not name the structural condition of her family. The plaque does not, in 2026, name the curse. So we return, one final time, to the question we asked in the cold open. How does the great-granddaughter of the first Earl of Evia die alone in an Oxford undergraduate's room at age 22? The answer is that she dies in the room because the operational environment that produced her trajectory was an environment in which the structural disincentives were, by the 1886 Trust Structures design, absent. The environment did not kill her. The environment was simply the environment in which her death became structurally unsurprising. The single bed in an Oxford undergraduate's room. The 1886 family line trust structure. The Lotus Elan S2 Sports Coupe. 3 documents. 3 deaths. 3 generations. In each case, the Guinness fortune was operationally present at the moment of the death. In each case, the fortune did not cause the death. The structural environment the fortune produced across 140 years of irrevocable trust corpus protection was the structural environment in which the deaths became statistically density clustered. Edward Cecil Guinness, 1st Earl of Evia, is buried in the family cemetery at Elveden in Suffolk. Walter Guinness, 1st Baron Moyne, is buried at the St Andrew's Anglican Cemetery at El Alamein. Tara Brown is buried at Lugala. Lady Henrietta Guinness is buried at Spoleto. Olivia Channon is buried at Holy Trinity Church, Kelvedon Hatch. The trust continues. The brewery continues. It is, finally, just a family. On the morning of Monday, the 23rd of June 1986, a college scout named Mary Ledwidge entered the undergraduate study bedroom of a third-year history student named Gottfried von Bismarck. On the single bed, lying face down across the duvet in a black silk evening dress, was the body of a 22-year-old female undergraduate. Her name was Olivia Channon. She was the 7th of 14 documented Guinness family premature deaths under the age of 40. This is the full story of the Guinness dynasty from the afternoon of Monday, the 31st of December 1759, when Arthur Guinness signed a 9,000-year lease on a derelict 4-acre brewery property, to the afternoon of Friday, the 25th of July, 1986, when the Oxford City coroner returned the verdict that produced the Sun newspaper's front-page compilation of the Guinness Curse. The thesis is not that the Guinnesses lost their fortune. The Guinness family's collective interest in Diageo plc in 2026 exceeds £2 billion. The trust instruments remain in operative force. What this video is about is the operational capacity of an inheritance instrument of that scale to produce an operational financial environment in which the cluster was approximately 14 to 17 times the contemporaneous baseline rate. The instrument did not kill them. The instrument was simply the structural environment in which their deaths became statistically density clustered. This video does not claim a supernatural causal mechanism. It documents the cluster as the documented statistical phenomenon it is, and it identifies the structural condition of the 1,886 trust instruments executed by Edward Cecil Guinness that produced it. Every name, date, and geographical location in this documentary is sourced. Full bibliography in the comments.